It's time for Cats Talk Wednesday. Small town and big city joined forces. Vinny Hardy of Leach, Kentucky, and Terry Brown of Louisville, Kentucky, team up to give you free-flowing, laid-back sports talk. Focus on Kentucky Wildcats, as well as pertinent information in the NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball.
Happy Wednesday evening. Happy Cats Talk Wednesday, another episode. Terry Gator Boots Brown, you know it's got to be serious when he ain't even tungsten arm no more. And the win over Florida made him change that to Gator Boots. So, of course, we're going to talk about the big Florida W. We got some volleyball history in the making in a little bit as well. Y'all tune in and listen to us on Anchor, Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Watch us on Roku and YouTube, and courtesy of the BS3 network. Definitely proud to be a part of that. BS3TVLive.com. You can hit the little link, click on demand, scroll down, and find us. We got episodes on demand. So Terry Gator Boots Brown right there with his fire setup in the new house. I'm Vinny Hardy here, and we bring you another episode. Appreciate everybody takes the time to listen. We got two guests coming as well. We get to them in just a second. My fellow Harlan County and Cumberland Redskin and former UK quarterback Freddie Maggard is hopping on here in about 5 minutes. And then the voice of the Cats himself, Tom Leach, is hopping on. So we're going to talk a lot of UK football with this win over Florida. Both of these guys are friends of the show, been on multiple times before, and I'm looking forward to chopping it up with them again. With TB, man, I saw you on Round of Shots with the homies Kevin and Kerry and Van and Corey Price, and it's not trying to make it old hat, but it's another win over Florida. They're starting to happen more often. We went decades without it, and now we stacking dubs against the Gators.
3 out of 5.
Yes,
3
sir.
out of 5 games Kentucky has won. And when you throw out probably 3 or 4 other games in the last decade that Kentucky was good enough to win.
Yeah.
The untimed down, you're not missing that play clock down at Florida,
Mm-hmm.
the bonehead mistakes of not covering 2 Florida receivers. Other than the COVID year blowout, this has been a pretty evenly matched series, and I never would have thought that. It was just a matter of could Kentucky get over the hump. Now, keep in mind, those 3 games, including last Saturday, Kentucky did not play an A-plus game. It used to be if Kentucky was going to be competitive, everything had to break their way.
Yeah.
And that's not what happened on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a few folks, Kentucky would have, should have, could have scored more points, but I'm encouraged by the fact, and we'll get Freddie to speak to that, is Kentucky is good enough to win road SEC games against name programs and not play a perfect game.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is a mark of a good team. Any team can win if everything goes the right way.
Yeah.
You cause a bunch of turnovers, the other team, whatever, missing a bunch of players. But for Kentucky to play pretty poor in the first half, all things considered, still be right there in it, I was encouraged. In the second half, the defense played lights out. I know the miscues were there, but you can point to any game, anytime, and you can point to where a team could have won by more, converted more. I mean, that's just even your Cowboys in the Super Bowl against the Bills, and they scored like 85 points, but there was still Aikman wasn't perfect, right? So you can always point to something, but my thing is you got to step back and look.
Leon Lett, just tuck it.
Right. If it's a close game, that's a much bigger play, right?
Yeah.
So my whole thing is it was a good win. It was a gutsy win. And it was the kind of win because you can, like I said, if Kentucky wins on a fluke, it's raining, it's snowing, it's whatever, that's explained away. But when the camera was panning the Florida sideline in the second half, and them boys just didn't have any answers. It looked like they didn't have any answers. And then when Florida went for it on a couple of those crazy fourth downs. They chasing points, man. And that to me was a win. It was just like LSU last year, right? LSU went for it on fourth down, I think on their first or second drive of the game. And you're like, oh, they don't think they can compete, right? And so that's what happened against Florida. Anthony Richardson, the Cam Newton mixed with Vince Young, mixed with
Dak Prescott, a little pinch of Dak.
Little Dak in there, and no fault to the young man. He's probably better than he showed on Saturday, but still, the defense was there. And again, there's nothing gimmicky. That's the one thing that I have been encouraged with under Stoops was, how mummy, those teams great, but a little gimmicky, right? Little gimmicky, the ascension of Stoops has been, we're going to punch you in the mouth until you get tired of us punching in the mouth. Now you may win, but we're going to keep punching you in the mouth.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw. And that's what Kentucky is hung their hat on for the last few years under Mark Stoops is we are going to be physical. And that's really what it was on defense. Jordan Wright with a big play, Smith with a pick six return. The defense really shut Florida down. Corey Price said that Florida only ran, I think it was 2 or 3 plays in Kentucky territory in the second half.
That's ridiculous.
And the safety with 4 minutes left in the first half was Florida's last points of the game. I'm not a Florida historian, but I have to imagine that there's not too many times Florida's been shut out in the second half of a ball game in Gainesville. And the teams that have done that have probably gone on, maybe it's a Florida State team they play, or maybe it's, Miami back in the day. You'd have to imagine that's a pretty short list of teams that have been able to do that. And even if you say this Florida isn't, the Steve Spurrier Florida or the Urban Meyer Florida, it's still Florida. You check out their recruit rankings; they still have dudes. It's finally time for folks to start realizing, within and without, outside of the BBN, Kentucky's here. Kentucky's got dudes. There's no gimmick. It's just we have dudes. We have schemes. We've got the X's and O's. That was my takeaway from the game. Winning 3 out of 5. I don't want to say Florida's ho hum, but ho hum. I mean, that was the only thing I took umbrage with. The one guy, I can't remember who it was, that said Kentucky was soft before the game. Okay, Roman Harper, and somebody, I can't remember what account. Florida, Kentucky stuns Florida. Really? And even Deadspin put the Kentucky win up there on the same lines as Marshall going into Notre Dame. And then you haven't been paying attention. That's my only gripe. Like I said at the beginning of the season, if someone says Kentucky's going to 7-5, that's your right. People pick games all the time. But if your reasoning is because it's Kentucky, that don't do it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. So is it a surprise that somebody at that point, they were 500 in their last 4 games. Now they've won 3 out of 5. Is it really a shocker that team wins? I would not use that word to describe what took place. So that's my 2 cents. I love the game. It was great. The offensive line showed up a whole lot. Will Levis is as tough as they come. Cavassier Smoke in the second half gave us a JoJo Kemp-like performance. That's what you need to win on the road in the SEC.
Absolutely. And yes, it's not as David as Goliath as everybody wanted to make it out to be. Like you said, they put that in there with Marshall, and like Kentucky hadn't beat them the previous year, and they totally missed the point. It is not like this was fluky or out of the blue at all.
Right, and that's my whole point. If you I mean, it was an upset on the betting line. I get that, but shocker, we didn't shock the world. I mean, as much as folks want Florida to be Florida, Kentucky better. I mean, it's not it's on the field better. I don't care about the recruiting rankings and pedigree and all that kind of stuff. But for the last 5-6 seasons, Kentucky's been as good or better than Florida.
And we
So
talk about this a lot.
What a world to live in, right?
Yeah, we talk about it a lot too. And I asked Freddie about it too. I just had to email him the link, so he's trying to get in here with us. Billy Napier, heard a lot of good things about him. Seems like a likable, nice guy. Did some good things at Louisiana. Earned the right to, be in the running for the Florida job and all this kind of stuff. Paid his dues, if you want to say all that. It was still his second game in his first year at Florida. As much as you want to say he's improved, and Dan Mullen mailed it in, and he clearly, the wheels had fallen off on the previous regime. There's no way he can have whatever his culture is going to be in place yet. When you're playing a first year dude, his second game, congratulations on your win against Utah. But look, we're here in year 10. We should come down here and put it on you, and that's what happened.
Well, that's the thing too. Is as a first year coach, he hasn't made his mark yet. He's still evaluating. He's just had an off season to evaluate, and Freddie will tell you that off season versus in season is just different. Yeah. We've all heard about dudes that perform well at practice, great in drills, but when it comes game time, there's people that don't perform. And then there's guys like my man Jerry Rice, who not the fastest, not the biggest, but when the spotlight is the brightest, he's the best. Yeah. So you've got to evaluate under those kind of conditions. And that Utah game, it will probably turn out was fool's gold. We see this every year in college football, college basketball. Anytime you have preseason rankings, there's always a team or two that we look back and say, how did that team in the preseason? Yeah. Kentucky basketball in 2013 was Nerlens. That was preseason, I think preseason number one, start off the year number one. And was it deserved? Absolutely not. No. So that's not a phenomenon unique to Utah, but what do you do when you're dealing with rankings? Preseason rankings aren't going to go away as much as we would want them to. My only gripe would be we can't cling on to those preseason rankings, even when evidence shows us Notre Dame is not that team. Okay, so when a team loses, you need to drop out. That would be my thing. But other than that, Utah was not as good as we thought. Florida may not be as good as we thought. That's the downside to wins like this, is you don't know what kind of season Florida is going to have. But my point still remains: Kentucky is as good a program, slightly better than what's going on in Gainesville. And I know it's weird, right? You talk to Kentucky fans that there are a lot of folks that don't want to buy into the hype. I get it. But I think we talked about this one year before. The only reason you could look at the schedule for the last few years and not see 8, 9, 10 wins is simply because it was Kentucky. And as Kentucky fans, we've been burned by that, right? So
hey, let me bring our guest there. I just got
absolutely.
Freddie, I sent him a text that wasn't working, got him the email. He is in here. Fella coming Redskin, friend, guru of football, as everybody knows, former UK quarterback, does his thing for KSR and On 3 and the Depth Chart podcast and every kind of place where you can drop knowledge. Our guy Freddie Maggard is taking time. Look, On 3, on brand with the On 3.
Freddie, you like that?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Man, it's it's the grind. The season's here. For me, I got the game of the week, the Kroger KSR game of the week on Fridays, so that takes a lot of the week, and then UK happens. Got to do that on Saturday, and then got to do it again on Sunday. Monday, the Monday Morning Quarterback with Tom Leach, the KSR football podcast. I forgot the Depth Chart. We record at 10 o'clock on Sundays now. So, you all know, you all have lived this life for quite some time. It just never ends, It's a good thing. I'm not complaining.
Oh, Vinny, absolutely.
Vinny, we ain't back in the coal mines. You know what I mean? We're not working underground here. We're we're talking about sports. So
that's it. We're not slogging. Not slogging through that low cold, like
Oh.
Hey, speaking of the young kids, who is the game of the week for the high school for KSR this week? Where y'all going?
So we're going to Pike County. It's Belfry at Pikeville.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
our second rivalry game of the year, we had Danville and Boyle County. Last week we had Jackson County at Louisville Shawnee, and then a trip to Mayfield in week 2, and week 1 we were in Breathitt County. So we've been everywhere.
Yeah, giving the whole state love. Western Kentucky, can't say that you haven't been out there because you have.
Oh man,
you about ready to retire and move out to Mayfield. I mean,
I moved to Mayfield today if I could.
Man,
I fell in love with that place.
Wow.
I mean, it's beautiful. 1, 2. I mean, it's a football city, man. I mean, I got there at 4:30, and there were already 9 rows of tailgaters there, and they have to have a parking pass to park there to tailgate. So, and then the stands were packed, and it was just the team got a police escort in. It was a fantastic football experience for me.
Unbelievable. And you dropping weight like a prize fighter. Go ahead and talk about all your weight loss and how spelt you are and the physique you got, man. Come on.
I'm a long way from it. I'm working with Whitford Nutrition, doing shakes and healthy dinner. I had what did I have? I had onions, peppers, and turkey meatballs tonight for dinner. So that sounds fun, don't it? TB, you're out there. Hey, listen, I've been telling everybody, when I went to Nebraska, the corn was different. You know what I mean? It was bigger. It was better. And I'm sure, in Iowa, you experience some of that right now too, right?
Absolutely, with a cornfield just right in my backyard.
I see that.
Which is spot on.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk a little bit about the Iowa football, which is not football at all. But Freddie, the Florida game, my takeaway is this has become routine. And I don't mean to say ho hum, it's Florida, but you beat them 3 out of 5 times. And like I was telling Vinny, not gimmicky, no trickeration. It's just lining up, punch them in the mouth for 60 minutes and being a better team.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about it and I said it many times. Kentucky is the better program or the better team with better players than Florida. I mean, it wasn't close to me. I thought Kentucky was a 2-touchdown better team than Florida on Saturday. I think Kentucky could have left a lot of points out there. But again, man, Brad White is a superstar. I think he's a superstar, future head coach. That plan he had, a lot of people talking about the linebackers, and they did play well. I thought one of the most important plays of the game was Jacquez Jones' tackle on the quarterback draw. I think that was the tone setter. But the defensive linemen, and they rotated a bunch of guys up there, stayed fresh. They ate those blockers up to keep the linebackers free to chase Richardson and get tackles. That's their job, and they did a fantastic job, and the safeties did a real good job of fitting the run. Carrington Valentine was 3rd on the team in tackles. I mean, it was just a great play and great execution. Offensively, I thought Will Levis was the best player on the field. But Kentucky, we've seen 6 quarters of offensive line play that just wasn't up to standard. And there's a lot that went into that. I mean, we can get to that in a whole different podcast. But come second half, go out, simplify things, run some multiple tight end sets, make it easier, make the targets easier. Okay, this is who you got to block, and this is how you got, and that's what Kentucky did. It was more of a state of mind or an attitude than it was X and O's. I mean, you can add the personnel groupings in there. Yes, that did help, but it was that. And football is a game of attrition. That's why I never like to get too excited in the first half or too down in the first half, because football is attrition, right? I knew that Florida defensive front seven was thin. Had some dudes up there, but not a lot of depth, right? So Kentucky just wore them down. You saw as the game went towards the end of the fourth quarter, Kentucky was dominating up front. Florida looked tired. Florida looked defeated, and Kentucky had its way up front. So.
And that's been the calling card, right? Yeah. Going back to the Benny Snell days, I think he had the bulk of his yardage, in the 3rd and 4th quarters.
Yeah.
That seems to be what this Mark Stoops team is about. It's not gimmicky. It's just
come
the 4th quarter, are you going to be able to do your job? Because we are.
Yeah.
Right. And Kentucky may not win all those games, but if you're going to beat Kentucky, you're going to have to outwork the Cats. And as a fan, that's what I love to see.
Yeah. TV, I think you're so right there. I thought it was very fitting that Mark Stoops got his 61st win in the Swamp, a place that 10 years ago, most of us on this podcast thought was an impossible task to ask Kentucky to go down and win. Mm-hmm. So he got it at Florida, but Saturday was a Mark Stoops win. It may have gotten there a little differently, but it was a typical and beautiful Mark Stoops win. Okay, you take it on the chin, right? You get a couple scores, the punt, and just a lot of things happen that was strange. You get down 9 points. What's he do at halftime? What does he always say? We're going to go back to work. Didn't panic. Went back to work. That second half was a Mark Stoops half. Great defense. Florida. 2 first downs in the third and fourth quarter. Offense ran the football, managed the clock, missed the kick, but won on essentially sealed the game with a field goal. So I think it was a prototypical Mark Stoops win at Florida, and very fitting it came in the Swamp.
And you said on the depth chart that the offensive line. Stoops said, "Don't panic about the offensive line."
Yeah.
And you said, when he speaks, I listen.
Exactly.
And you had to force yourself not to panic. So if you were panicking, doing all the things you've done, and knowing everything you know,
it's understandable.
Imagine how much more the fans and the non-experts were. Yeah. So what was causing the panic for you until the point where you had to say, okay, I'm not going to panic anymore? What caused it?
I was concerned going into the first game because you had 5 new offensive lineman starters at 5 new positions. Eli Cox started last year at guard, now he's at center. So you have 5 new starters. That's a lot. Communication was a concern of mine going into Miami of Ohio and certainly Florida. But what really, when you saw Kentucky get beat a few times, more than a few times against Miami of Ohio, it was stunts, blitz, twist, delayed action by the linebackers. Miami was X and O-ing that up, right? And Kentucky didn't pick it up. Center called the wrong direction a few times. Will went the wrong way a few times. Just wasn't talking, right? That is coachable. That could get cleaned up. That did not concern me. What concerned me was the one-on-one losses. A large portion of that was at left tackle, but also at right tackle. So I look for 2 things. If it's scheme, it can be fixed. If it's communication, it can be coached up. But if it's one-on-one losses in an individual play, I get worried. And I saw too many losses in that category.
Okay. That makes sense. TB, I think I might have stepped on you, man.
No, Freddie, just the progression of Mark Stoops. I know it's been talked about a lot, but I really think it's remarkable just the progression that the program has made.
Yeah.
And I'm here in Iowa. This is where Stoops played college ball. And when I tell folks I'm from Kentucky, they want to talk Stoops more than they want to talk Cal.
Yeah.
Because they recognize the job he's done in Lexington. And if Ferentz is on his way out, a lot of people are like, they want to call Stoops.
Yeah.
But they understand just that grit that he's bringing. And someone said this to me yesterday. You look at the teams that have dominated the SEC, the Bamas, the Georgias. It's nothing gimmicky. They just beat you up for 60 minutes. Yeah. And that's how Kentucky has risen, to being arguably top 2 or 3 teams in the conference. I think you can make that assertion.
Absolutely. And if you look at Mark Stoops, you got to look deep, right? You got to peel back the layers a little bit. What influenced his football life? One, he's from Youngstown, and that is a football city. It's a lot like the Tri-Cities, Vinny. I mean, it's a U.S. steel town, and you and I come from that. So his dad is a coach, so that's a great influence on him. He goes to Iowa and plays for Hayden Fry. Was that his name?
Yeah. Coach Fry. Mm-hmm.
Coach Fry. So that's his first 2 influences, plus his brother Bob, right? Player, coach. His uncle Bob coached at Youngstown and won all those national championships with Tressel. So football was taught to him in a way that is physical, tough, chip on your shoulder, don't take anything for granted, we're going to outwork you. How would you describe the Kentucky football program in 2022? Physical, tough, don't let anybody outwork you, same thing, right? So I think Kentucky is such an amazing story when it's all said and done, and Stoops hopefully retires one day here. We're going to look back and think, there's a few instances where teams took on the personality of their head coaches. Kentucky is certainly that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Florida was that with Steve Spurrier. I mean, they had that attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a few examples, and I'm sure we could get deeper into it. But this Kentucky program, this Kentucky fan base, has taken key or been taught how to football by Mark Stoops, and we like it. It's not pretty. It's not the air raid. It's not, if you look right now, Kentucky's ranked 13th in the conference in total yards per game and ranked last in the conference in rushing. That's not happening forever, right? So it may look a little different how it gets there, but when it's crunch time, they're going to go back to Stoops ball, and that's what Kentucky did to beat Florida.
And that's been my takeaway. People expecting us to score 50 points a game and throw it 40 times a game, that's just not happening.
No.
We are going to grind it out on people, and I'm okay with that. A win's a win, right? In my book, whether it's by 10, by 3, whatever. And here we are at our advanced ages seeing Kentucky go down to Gainesville. It's not a surprise. Right. It's not a fluke. It's not whatever, we're not soft. We're just going down there to kick butt. Can I say that on the show, Vinny? Kick butt? Keep it clean.
If anything, it was a little bit disappointing because I thought Kentucky was a 14-plus point better team than Florida. So, I mean, there's a bunch of ways to look at it. Kentucky can grind it. I think they're going to need to work on that these next 2 weeks, the run game. Mm-hmm. But you got to, when you got a dude at quarterback, you got a chance. And Will Levis is that dude, man. I mean, I still talk to a lot of people, decision makers in the NFL, and to a person, they tell me that Will made money against Florida. Mm-hmm. That's what they wanted to see, him get hit in the face, get up, him throw a deep ball like that, him run a pro style offense. And one person told me that the most impressive part of Will's game on Saturday was the fact that he operated the huddle, got the plays in, didn't have to call a timeout, and Kentucky only had one offensive penalty. Ooh. So he managed the game, right? I mean, that's a bad – some people think that's bad, but the management of the quarterback position, I thought Will was extremely, extremely good at Saturday.
And that leads me to my follow-up question. These next couple of weeks, we've got Youngstown State coming to town. What are you looking for the team to work on? I know you said running game, offensive line, a little bit more from Will in the passing game, perhaps.
Yeah. I think that Barryon Brown is going to have a huge game against Youngstown. He had the kickoff return. Dane Keys had his thing, I think they're going to get Barryon in there and get him some catches and let him do his deal. You're going to see some new receivers too. Some of those freshmen. DeKel Crowdis may make his first real appearance in a game, and then some others. So, there's two ways to look at it. Do you want to work on that run game against an actual opponent, and that's something that Kentucky could do, or hey, we want to throw it around because our guy Will got us a win in Florida. Let's get him some stats, right? I mean, there's different ways to look at it. Either way, I think this week is probably one of the hardest practice weeks of the year because that Mark Stoops is here. He's heard it. The players have heard it, how great they are. They beat Florida. They've arrived. Now it's on. You just got to get to Georgia, get to the Georgia game. And you got a bunch of tough dudes from Youngstown coming to town. And how many upsets have we seen? So I'm not saying Kentucky's going to lose, but Chattanooga about beat Kentucky last year. Yeah. Right. So got to be clean. I want to see clean on offense. Defense, just do what you do because they're going to get tested. Youngstown has a running back averaging close to 190 yards a game, so that's going to test. But Kentucky's built to play that style of football. Mainly, I want to see clean game. I don't want to see penalties. I want to see anybody hurt, and I want to see the young players get in. I want to see Keontae Goodwin in game action, right? I want to see Keaton Wade more. Get the young players in, and get David Wallaball back in there. Get him some confidence back because the young man had a rough night against Miami at left tackle. Get him back in there and let him taste a little bit of success, and I think that will help his development down the line.
Absolutely. Oh, we talked about it before you came on. You get a first-year coach at a program, the cupboard is going to vary. Some cupboards are very bare. Mark Stoops. Napier's cupboard wasn't as bare, but I still think, and I've said it many times, if you're an established coach, which you don't get to be established in the SEC without doing something right. Stoops has been here 10 years, Saban, you got to be doing something right to stay around.
Yeah.
If you're established, Billy Napier is probably an upgrade over the tail end of Dan Mullen, but that was only his second game as Florida's coach. You got to take it to a guy that's just getting his stuff together in a new program. We saw Stoops take his lumps in year 1, 2, and 10. Everybody's got to be looking at, hey, we got to beat Billy Napier. First year, he's going to have to take lumps. Beamer, maybe he's the exception to the rule by going 6-6 and win the bowl game, but he barely beat Vanderbilt and barely beat Missouri, or he's 4-8, and we're looking at him differently. So I think first year coach, you gotta jump on him.
Well, Beamer also had Florida come in there not good at all. Got that win, and just there was a lot of things that went into South Carolina. Who it's sad to think that they're already out of playoff contention, because that's how a lot of people saw them going into the season, as usual. But yeah, I thought Stoops absolutely outcoached Napier in the fourth quarter. Stoops' management, again, much like Will Levis, the management of the game, you could tell Stoops was that 10-year veteran, and Napier's in his second game, his first SEC game. Yeah. So, it's a big difference. And, I tried to tell everybody all week, if you think Florida beat Utah, that's great. Utah should have won the game. Kentucky's got much better players than Utah. So I think, going back to TV's point earlier, it's okay for us to have a good football team. It's okay for us to have expectations. And it's hard for, somebody like us or me who goes way farther back than you all. It's almost surreal that Kentucky is a top 10 team, and it's a legitimate top 10 team. And it's okay to get excited, and it's a great time to be a fan.
And that's that hurt that I've been telling people, these kids don't know that we lost some game in 1984 or that the one team went 1-10. They're not living in that hurt. Mm-mm. As I said before the season, Freddie, if someone says Kentucky's going 7-5, I don't get mad. Right? No. People are picking. Right. What I do take points with is, that was a shock because Kentucky beat Florida. That just tells me, Mr. TV person, you're not doing your homework.
Oh, no.
Right. If you think that we are going to 7-5 just because it's Kentucky, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah.
So that's where I take umbrage with folks that try to, knock down what we're doing. We've been as good or better than Florida for 7 of the last 8 years.
Yeah. I like to call it, people get logo fooled. They see the Gators on the helmet, there's already a perception. See the UK on the helmet, there's a perception. Yeah. And, that happens all the time. The Utah win counted way too much because, it's Utah. They're a good team, but they play in a bad league, right? So a little bit different in the Southeastern Conference.
Absolutely.
100% I agree. It's logo, and people get confused that Kentucky's logo, that brand is a top 10 team, and it's won 10 games 2 out of 4 years.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of getting used to, I guess, for some folks outside of the fan base that just is having so much fun now. You get through Florida, okay, we get two weeks to cheer them on, right? We're at home. And then here we go back into the worry part when Ole Miss got to go travel to Oxford. So, yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people don't respect Kentucky because of the logo, the history, the perception, and that's just basically not true.
And speaking of that, last year we saw, and look, nobody can control what happens with the other teams after you play them. Alabama fans still talk about 97. Well, we went 4-7 when the year y'all beat them. Well, we can't control what you did after you lost in Lexington. Last year, Florida and LSU didn't have great seasons, and people wanted to use that to kind of diminish what Kentucky did. Do you see this year's Florida team finishing up better than last year's Florida team?
I think this year's Florida team is better coached, better disciplined, better organized, and tougher. And I still don't think any other team on that schedule will hold Anthony Richardson to 4 yards rushing. I mean, this is going – I mean, you know, what Kentucky did down there, especially in the second half, you know, that's a statement defensively. So I think Florida's going to be better than they were last year. Yes, 100%, because they believe in Billy Napier. I mean, they do. I mean, and he is known in the coaching world as a high-level organizer, and that's what that program needed. I think Dan Mullen didn't recruit very hard. He didn't organize. He didn't manage. You know, so and Napier does just that. So yeah, I think he's going to be good for them.
How did you evaluate? Speaking of Anthony Richardson, how did you evaluate him? I mean, was not a lot to go on, but your impression of what you graded him.
I do think he has elite traits. I mean, I think he's physically. I mean, he's got a very strong arm. He's fast. He's strong. I mean, he can run. But again, I didn't put a great deal of stock in the Utah win, and the body of work hadn't been there for me for Anthony Richardson. So I've watched him closely. I've watched the game several times. I still think that the hit that Jacquez Jones had on the quarterback draw was the moment. You know, we can talk about the interception with Jordan Wright in that too. The moment that Anthony Richardson realized, hey, listen, I'm not going to out-athlete these guys. I mean, these guys can run. They can play. And it could have been they were too high from the Utah win, or it could have been, okay, that's Kentucky. We should roll over them because we're favored by a touchdown. But I think at that moment, things got more difficult for Anthony Richardson. And when it gets more difficult for a quarterback, your confidence seems to go down. He was throwing high, which means his mechanics were not where they should be. So it's just, it's a tough deal, man. And I still think he's a fantastic athlete and can be a great quarterback. I've just not seen enough of him, but man, he is super, super talented.
Because he threw 2 picks, but he was trying. I tweeted that again. He was trying to throw 6 or 7. There were a lot of tip balls, a lot of, and I was like, this dude is trying to gift wrap some picks tonight.
Yeah, you could tell that. I could tell by his eyes in the second half that he was like, oh crap.
Yeah, because the camera panned to him.
These guys,
the camera panned to him, and it was just, what do you do? And I felt that Florida's a staff, when they start going for it on 4th down like they were doing, that to me was like, oh, they don't think they can do their regulars. LSU did it last year. I think they went for 4th down, like on their first or second drive, and it's like, oh, you don't think you can? Okay. That to me was like, oh, game over. Like they don't think they can do this.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, these players hear what we say. They may say they don't, but they do. They read what we write. They may say they don't, but they do. Anthony Richardson was being praised by everybody last week, and maybe since he's a new starter, he's not a new player, he's a new starter. In his mind, he thought, man, I can get on the edge on anybody. This is easy. And when Jacquez Jones, met him up, I think that was a moment like, okay, because I thought personally, if I had to pick between Jordan Wright and Chris Rodriguez Jr., who to play on Saturday against Florida, I would have picked Jordan Wright all day long, because look what he did with him and J.J. Weaver on the edge that kept contained. Richardson couldn't get out of the pocket. Kentucky got in his face and stayed in his face for 60 minutes. And again, just a great, awesome game plan by Brad.
And Kentucky, look, you were part of the staff. You know it better than anybody. You hear the big dog say it. You hear Stoops say it. Recruit and develop.
Yeah.
Recruit and develop. Now the level of player has gotten better. They're not getting elite 5-star like Alabama, but they have raised the level of talent.
Yeah.
While still recruiting and developing. But talk about how they seem to continue to hit with the transfer portal too, because these guys coming in, Levis, Darren Rosenthal, Boss Man Fat, they could come in and not pan out, but they're getting bang for their buck every time a dude comes in from the transfer portal too.
Well, I think first of all, Stoops accepted the transfer portal. Some fought it. It's a rule, so you try to use it to the best, right? And you had a couple corners. It's gone both ways. You had a couple corners, one at Pitt and one at Purdue. Both made big plays in the same night. But I think Mark and Vince and that staff have been very strategic in the portal, going after certain positions, certain players that fit. I think they have a fit that they like, and that's what they go after. They don't, you see Ole Miss, who supposedly won the portal. You see teams with 18, 20 new players. Kentucky doesn't do that. They see a need, they fill it with the portal, and they hit on these guys because Kentucky is one of the best. This is not me talking. These are a lot smarter folks than me. Kentucky develops their players as good or better than anybody in the country. I have my most trusted SEC personnel expert. I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave his name out of it. He said, we live in a day and age that Kentucky has better players than Florida and LSU. And then his next text was, Florida and LSU have players that do great at combines. Kentucky has football players that play great in football games. And there's a big difference.
That's exactly what I told Vinny before you got on was, Florida's got dudes. Other teams have dudes that test well. But from having to play, there's a difference between practice player and game player.
Yeah.
There are players that they look the part. They check all those boxes. But when the whistle blows, not the same. And you've got people that don't do any of that stuff. Like, they always show that picture of Tom Brady from his combine, and you have to be like, why would you draft that guy?
Yeah.
And then you look at what he does. So
yeah.
I love that as a fan, and not so much X's and O's. I remember, I think it was the Mississippi State game, Stoops' first or second year. And I just saw we had defensive players in the right places, didn't always make the right plays. And I said to myself then, if we get some dudes, the X's and O's are there. And now we've got dudes in the right position, making the right plays, particularly on defense.
Well, you remember that Mississippi State team with Dak that was so good, was ranked number 1 in the country. They played in Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big storylines was that the Mississippi State had 2 front sevens, the 1s and the 2s, and they were completely different. They played with each other. So the 1s would play 2 series, come out. The 2s would play 2 series, then the 1s. That way you're always fresh up front. Again, I go back to what I said, Jacquez Jones, DeAndre Square, who is 49 tackles shy of 300. I'm keeping that tally.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to see that kid get that. Weaver and Wright get all the credit, but those big guys up front, they may not have had a lot of tackles. Deion Walker had a tackle for loss of one of the biggest plays in the game, true freshman. But you'll see them eat up 2 blockers, right? When they're eating up 2 blockers, that's 1 blocker that can't get to the linebacker. So, I try to explain it like this. Those defensive linemen, their job is, to get to the quarterback, yes. To get a tackle, yes. But their main job is to occupy offensive linemen so the linebackers can run. They did a fantastic job of that. Ty Asian was excellent in his run fits. And I think we saw the beginning of something that could be special. And Jordan Lovett at safety, 7 tackles, came in for Jalen Geiger. Prayers for him and his family. Great people.
Mm-hmm.
And hope he's okay. But Jordan Lovett came in and played really well.
Gotta ask you real quick before we let you go about your Steelers. You're the only person that's got a team that's 1-0 on this podcast right now as far as NFL. So are you having fun, kind of maybe giving it to the Bengals fans a little bit since they were riding high last year?
No, because I know next time we play them, it ain't gonna be that way. I think we're in trouble.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless 2 gloves can do something for us, I think we might be in trouble. Kenny Pickett.
Okay.
A little worried. TJ Watt's out. That's a little worrisome there. Running backs out. Najee Harris, that's a little worrisome there. So, I'm also a Jags fan, and I like the Jags with Josh Allen there, but my guy Luke Fortner went down there starting at center. So Man, I look like TB. I got Jags gear. I've got it all.
We ain't mad at you. We ain't mad at you.
That's
you
okay.
Like it out there in Iowa, bro. You like it out there?
Yeah, the winters aren't fun, but I do like it. It's great. I did go to the Iowa South Dakota State game and did the wave. Have you seen that? Where they wave to the kids?
Really cool. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I was ready to wave. I was not ready for the kids in the windows to wave back.
Oh yeah.
We were on that end.
Yeah.
That was very, very nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, Iowa, like I said, they love Stoops.
I hate that too.
The bowl game was fun. My wife is a Hawkeye fan.
Yeah, no, I see it.
So,
yeah, house divided.
Yeah, well, we knew when both teams were 6-0 last year. I said, you know what's going to happen. Kentucky's going to play Iowa, and it came to pass. But it was good. The people here are nice. Yeah. Even after the game, they were really excited because of Stoops. If we had to lose, they were excited for Stoops. So it's been good. It's been good. We're going to go to a wrestling meet in the winter too, Vinny.
That's big. That's huge there.
Yes, 24 national championships, 8 runners-up. They're getting their own wrestling facility. We're talking about facilities in Lexington. Yeah. Wrestling's getting its own place. In Iowa City. So
that's awesome, though. That's great, guys. I appreciate y'all having me on.
Can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Freddie.
Yeah, you guys take care, and anytime you need me, just holler. I'm always here. Okay.
Hey,
all right. Thank you, Freddie.
All right, see you guys.
You good, man. UKQB, Freddie Maggard, Harlan Countyan, Cumberland Redskin, good people, dropping knowledge. Speaking of, wait a minute, what was that? If it lagged on me a little bit. Let me see. I wish I hadn't asked what that was. Now, man, okay. Where'd that come from?
To TB, all my best. Joe Montana.
Man, now where'd that come from, Lord? I said, let me go and hook him up.
That's still a funny story that it just sat in my basement at my condo because I didn't think it was for me. To my youngest looked, said, Dad, it's got your name on it. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, Lord, yeah. Speaking of though, have you, I know you had a lot going on, new house, newly married, job changes, Mama B came to visit.
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic.
All those things. But have you taken time to carve out a minute to make a cameo for Kurt Farron's son? Seems like everybody making them cameos for.
So, look, through 2 games, the Iowa offense has 1 offensive touchdown. The longest drive is like 6 or 7 plays. It's not great. And I keep, we had our spaces last night, and all I'm saying is, Scott Frost being out at Nebraska.
Yeah.
And Farron's seat getting a little warm.
Mm-hmm.
On the call-in shows and what have you. Those folks are talking about Stoops as you would expect. I keep telling folks, I'm not saying that Mark Stoops will leave Kentucky for Iowa or Nebraska. Definitely not Nebraska, because that is a disaster of a program. As you talking about with cupboards being bare, that Nebraska cupboard, it's bare. Amon Green not walking through that door. Tommy Frazier not walking through that door. And all those guys. My point is, Iowa's going to come calling. Whether or not he answers, whether or not the call is serious, I can't tell you. Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is I've listened to post-game shows and caught little snippets of stuff here in Iowa. And as I keep telling people, the natives are all about Mark Stoops. His name is on the list. Now, that's the thing about Iowa, though, is between Ferentz and Hayden Fry, you only get one new coach every 20 to 25 years.
Yeah, like they kind of like the Steelers with that.
Right. They look like the Steelers, and that is their whole thing. There's probably been 3 Iowa coaches in our lifetime.
Man.
So, and we're old people, you and I. But my point is, they may come calling, and I don't and look, I hope he doesn't leave if they come calling. Let me be very clear about that.
Yeah.
I don't want Stoops to come to Iowa, but I just think it's a call that he'll listen to. And folks, well, it's a step down.
Even as a courtesy, he listened.
Yeah, okay, the Iowa offense is dreadful, but we literally just played Iowa in the same bowl. So it's not like the programs are world apart, right? That's the point I've been trying to make is the offense is just dreadful. They've got all conference defensive players. The punter, my goodness, with the workout he's getting, but
unbelievable.
The issue is Kirk Ferentz's son is the offensive coordinator. It was bad last year. They finished either last or dead last in just about every offensive category across the board. They were told off season the offense is going to be more dynamic. And 155 yards against South Dakota State.
Man.
Only one short scoring drive thanks to a turnover in your defense against Iowa State.
And Iowa State drove 99 yards on them to win the game, right?
The defense was gassed. That's the thing is that you can only ask your defense to do but so much. If you can't extend drives, you might have the 85 Bears on there, but that's not going to work.
So my Cowboys, talk about defense being out there all night. That's what happened Sunday against Tampa. Love Dak, but they wasn't doing anything before he got hurt, and the defense was out there all day. So yeah, I mean the Iowa fans, maybe they had to be at least. I mean, I know it was Lil Ames that was doing it, but they had to at least appreciate seeing a drive, even it is your bitter rival that was doing the drive.
Well, and the thing, the Iowa fans, they're realistic. They understand, this has been their bread and butter since forever. They haven't had the quarterback come out and light things up. Alex Karras of Webster fame and Blazing Saddles is Iowa's dude. Like, Dallas Clark. Like it's tight end you. You got Dallas Clark. You got Kittle. You got all these good tight ends. Robert Gallery had that great All-American season a few years ago. Like it's the offensive linemen and tight ends that we know from Iowa, right? So they're used to having to grind things out. But this is even beyond that. This is not that. This is not palatable at all. I mean, one touchdown in 8 quarters. That's tough.
That's rough. That's rough. Trying to get Tom Leach situated. I had to email him the link. Hopefully he can get it because I had to text it to Freddie, then email it to Freddie. Texted to Tom. It wasn't able to get in. Emailed it to him. So hopefully he'll be here in just a second. But we mentioned that Frost got let go at Nebraska. Freeman at Notre Dame is already in a hot seat. But for a minute, I thought Frost might hang around longer than Freeman because because you said whatever, you tweeted me like, man, Notre Dame's not going to put up with this, and they're not. They're going to Tyrone Willingham him if he doesn't get it together.
Yes,
but I thought Frost might stick around longer, but Georgia State was finally the nail in his coffin because they had it out there in Lincoln.
Nebraska was something like 200, maybe 315-0, scoring 35 points at home, and the one was Georgia State. And I know a lot of folks, his buyout goes down October the 1st. Look, somebody went to the AD, Trev Albert, and said, look, you got to make this move now. Here's my checkbook. It's a gots-to-go situation. Because losing to Georgia Southern is bad. Doing it in year like 4 or 5 or whatever, you can't have that. You'll let stuff slide with a first-year coach, second-year coach as he's trying to build things up. But it was obvious that Nebraska wasn't going to turn around under Scott Frost's leadership. And then the whole puking thing, like, okay, that's just fake tough guy stuff. I'm not too worried about that. But going back to Notre Dame and Marshall, way to go, Thundering Herd.
Yeah.
Way to go, Appalachian State against TAMU.
Absolutely.
and you see all the stuff coming out of Texas A&M, the cheers about the Appalachian folks and all this kind of stuff. You're in College Station, Texas. The last thing you need to do is talk about how backwoods somebody in Appalachia is. You're in College Station. You're not even in Dallas or Houston or San Antonio. Come on, man. Come on.
Absolutely. Let me see. I have a couple of technical difficulties with Tom Leach. Let me see. Oh, here we go. There we go. We have the voice of the Cats himself. I thought I had messed up, but we got him in here with the link. And so we will recap the Gators with him. Appreciate him taking the time. Go ahead and bring Bourbon County's finest on Tom Leach. Sorry about the curveball, Tom. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. I'm sitting here watching the Kentucky volleyball game and getting over a cold, so I may cough a few times, like right there. But
thank you.
I had to find enough settings to change. We finally got it to work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we definitely appreciate you taking the time as always, and got a little drainage going on myself right now, but the Cats making history as well. We hadn't talked about that yet, but Coach Skinner and company, he was on your show talking about it, playing Louisville for the fourth time that a women's regular season volleyball game is on the mothership. So glad that Coach Skinner and the Cats can be part of that for sure.
Yeah, they're up 3 as I'm watching this, and been playing well. They were down early and they've come back to take the lead. So hopefully they can do this. I'm going to walk to a different location as we do this because my battery is dying.
Oh, hey, since COVID, that's part of it. You know, Dick Gabriel in his garage.
Yes.
People have dogs barking and stuff now on, you know, when it was normally pristine audio and you hear keys rattling and kids crying. Since COVID, that's everybody's kind of gotten.
Yeah, that's the norm. Everybody's gotten used to it. I've got a home office out behind the garage, so let me just walk out there as we talk and get it hooked up to a better sound.
Yeah, absolutely. A little leisurely stroll, but you know, you just came back Saturday from being, well, you joined Kaywood as a voice of the Cats to call consecutive games over the Gators. I look back at the series from 48 to 51. Kentucky beat them 4 straight. Was that Claude Sullivan that might have called that, or?
Would have been, yeah, I would think so. And there might have been other guys. There were multiple people calling games in those days, I think. But okay. Claude would have been the most recognizable. I don't think Kaywood. Let's see, he finished in 92, so that would have meant he started in, he would have started in 53. So, yeah, right. He wouldn't have been doing them then.
So you had Kentucky winning 3 championships in basketball and 4 football wins over the Gators. That was quite a run back in the day for those around to see it.
Well, you had Bear Bryant and Adolph Rupp together, and Fabulous 5 in basketball, and Babe Pirelli and Bob Gain in football. So pretty good players here at that time.
True. And the first win over Florida was 52-0. I mean, and then to imagine it got so one-sided, but started out with a bang, whooping up on them down there. You got to talk about your unique circumstances too. With you, everybody sees the tweets of the booth cam and you and Picoro in the booth, and you were calling on your cell phone there in the Swamp press box. Where does that rank in some of the unique situations where you've had to roll with the punches? Does that move high up the list, or where?
It's up there somewhere. But I mean, we had the power go out of the Bahamas back in August of 18. So Mike Pratt and I were doing one of those basketball games down there at that time on a cell phone. And then, you know, the days of doing high school games, you know, you do a lot of creative approaches.
Absolutely. Well, it, you know, didn't affect you at all. My one question too with Jeff were on the touchdown to Dane Key. He took his headset off to holler. So what what did he say at that point?
I don't because I've got headsets on, so I don't hear a lot of that stuff, and a lot of times don't even see what's going on with him or any of the other people in the booth. So it's kind of funny when I see it.
Yeah,
when they put it out too.
Absolutely. But TV, jump in because I don't want to just hog call, man.
No, covering the Cats over Mark Stoops' tenure, you've had kind of a front row seat to see this team go from 2 wins to struggling against Western Kentucky to now being able to out physical these name brand teams in the SEC. Kind of what has that been like to, you're there obviously for every game, and just you can visually see Kentucky's got dudes that can go and compete now, where, before we had some dudes, but now we got dudes up and down the roster to go out and compete in Gainesville.
Yeah, I remember that first game that Mark came here. They played Western Kentucky in Nashville, and Jeff went down on the field before the game and talked to some folks from the NFL that he knew, and he came back up and he said, yeah, my NFL buddy said Western has more NFL prospects than Kentucky does. So that's where Kentucky's talent was at that time to now where, Kentucky was the team with the superior depth in the fourth quarter. Kentucky had the better set of receivers. Kentucky had the better quarterback. Kentucky had a lot of superior guys on the defensive side of the ball, and get putting a lot of guys in the NFL in the last few years. So it's all about the talent.
Absolutely.
First and foremost.
For sure. This, of course, being the first time Kentucky went back-to-back against Florida since 76-77. You mentioned it on the show. You were kind of comparing and contrasting the vibe around Lexington and the fan base then as opposed to now. And did people was it just skeptical? Was it just nobody really wanted to jump in, even though they had great football going on then?
Back in the 70s?
Yeah.
Well, they hadn't been to a bowl game in 25 years. Remember, there weren't that many bowl games at that time. So Kentucky had not played in a bowl game since 1951. And when they went to the Peach Bowl, there was just off the charts excitement. 37,000 fans followed the team down to Atlanta for the bowl game. And so, I think when you hadn't been to a bowl game in 25 years, I don't know that anybody really dreamed much bigger than that.
Okay.
And I think that was the deal, because you had a lot of great players coming back. The other thing that might have taken a little the edge off the anticipation was that they were on probation, so they weren't going to be able to go to a bowl game.
Okay.
And then the other thing that happened early in that year, they had I think an injury or two in training camp leading up. Maybe David Hopewell, their starting center. Then they lost Jim Kovach, their best linebacker. They lost 3 more defensive starters in the first game, and they lost their best running back, Rod Stewart, in the second game. So they were just a deluge of injuries. And they went down and got whipped by Baylor in the second game. It was about 120 on the field down in Waco. And I think at that point, any excitement that was there was greatly diminished for all the injuries and the big loss to Baylor. But then they regrouped, and a couple of weeks later went up and won at Penn State. Turned out to be the only loss that Penn State team had that year. And then by the middle of the year, when they were healthy, that's when they went down and beat Georgia 33-0 and LSU 33-13 in Athens and in Baton Rouge in successive weeks. And at that time, I think Kentucky was that part of October probably was as good as anybody in the country.
Okay, that makes sense. For you, it doesn't matter to us, I don't think, but we can't control what happens after the games have been played. We just had Freddie Maggard on and talked about it. But last year, people wanted to kind of diminish what Kentucky did with LSU and Florida not having good seasons down the stretch. So do you, maybe part of you want to see Florida do good the rest of the way just to kind of stymie some of that might?
Sure. I don't care as much about the talk, but I just think, it makes you look better if the teams you beat do better. And plus, I'd love to see Florida, if you dream of Kentucky having a shot to get to Atlanta, then you'd love to see Florida get better and better and better and be able to test Georgia by the time they play in October.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. I've got to ask you about the book. You mentioned Mike as well, and hadn't mentioned the book, but you wrote a book with Mike, Kentucky Basketball 2 Decades Behind the Scenes. not trying to bring it all down, but I take the both of you all about trying to have you on, and because we had you on individually, want to try to have you on together. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm going to rant, but it reminded me of Emmitt Smith when he said, when he dreamed about breaking Walter Payton's record. I know you being a Bears fan, he envisioned Walter being there, it being a sunny day. Of course, it didn't play out that way. So, of course, Mike isn't here as well, but you both did the book. We all know Lacey Robinson, her Twitter profile is her and you and Mike there at the book signing. And
yeah, at a liquor store.
Yeah.
It's Kentucky. It's Kentucky.
Hey, no judgment.
We were trying to find a place to do a book signing at Christmas time in Louisville, and everybody was booked up, bookstores and everything. And so Mike said, well, my buddy here that owns this liquor store, he said he'd be glad to host us. And so he did. And that's where we had the book signing, and had a great turnout, had a great time.
And there's stories in the book where you talk about, fans talking about, especially at Indiana, how vicious they were, even to you all. As Mike says, we're just the radio guys, but they were just so rabid. And most of the time, the attention is on the players, is on Cal, more so when you guys roll into a town. Having signed the book, you and Mike were the center of attention. So how was that, where everybody was there to see you all first and foremost?
Oh, well, I mean, selfishly, we were selling a lot of books, so that was great. But no, it was fun because, it's Christmas time. People were wanting to get a lot of books signed for family members, other Wildcat fans. And so people had stories, especially from Mike, stories about, watching him play, or the person they were buying the book for, watched him play, or was a, Pratt and Issel fan or something like that. And I know Mike had a great time that day, and we had a tremendous turnout, and it was just, it was one of our more fun book signing events that we did.
And I'm not going to try to put you on the spot. This is one thing that I wish I'd asked Mike when we had him on. I knew you guys spent a lot of time together and traveled together. Him being a Browns fan and, growing up there in Dayton, when the Bengals came to town and began to be a franchise, he was a young adult in his early 20s. I wonder if maybe you had asked him if he ever thought about switching allegiances. Was he ever tempted to root for that team from Cincinnati, or was he always?
I don't think so. I think he was so locked in on the Browns. Now, he was a Reds fan. You're growing up there in Dayton. He wasn't a Cleveland Indians fan, but I think what had happened, the Browns, it being in Dayton, the way the TV deal worked in the NFL, I'm sure they got the Browns every week on TV, and the Bengals were so bad they didn't sell out in those early years, so a lot of those games were blacked out on local TV. So I'm sure he got the Browns, and especially before the Bengals even came into existence, he probably had the Browns on TV every weekend. So he was a Reds fan and a Browns fan, and I'm sure it was. I think he's even we talked about that's why he became a fan of the Browns.
Now, as the Bears fan that you are, TB here is a 49ers fan, so I always take delight when they lose. Were you surprised that your Bears were able to bounce back?
Yeah, it was. It's freaky weather situation, so.
I almost went to that game. I'm glad I didn't, to watch my team lose and sit in a torrential downpour. I'm glad I kind of backed out of that one.
Maybe that helped them. I don't know. I didn't do that. I was watching the Bengals game, and it was such a good game and kind of crazy. I was going back and forth between that and the Bears, but I watched the Bengals mostly, and I know the Bears were down 10-0 early and came back and won. So, the Bears have, for the most part, really struggled to find quarterbacks over my lifetime. So I'm hopeful. I was glad when they made the move to get Justin Fields, and maybe he can be the guy to finally solidify that position for more than a year or two for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you're there in the house watching your Bears, what hat do you watch them in? Is it just a fan, or do you find yourself kind of listening to what the broadcaster says and maybe he should have said it this way or that way?
No, I'm just a fan of those times. When I'm working, and otherwise I'm just a fan watching. But the only thing that's noteworthy is, I don't cheer much. You're conditioned not to. in my job. So, and all media jobs, and so I don't cheer a lot, even if I go to games. I just kind of watch, but I'm into it, and occasionally I remember one of in recent years, one of the times that I just kind of jumped off the couch just cheering was the year that the young lady, they called her Itty Bitty, I think, from Mississippi State, hit the shot to beat UConn and end their long winning streak.
Yeah.
And I was just tired of hearing about UConn, and Mississippi State I was watching that game, and she hit the shot and jumped off the couch cheering. So that was one of the few times I cheered.
So you talk about the story famously of Jeff Van Note, leaning out, hollering at the LSU fans. Yeah. So most of the time, I guess there's never been a situation where fans have they maybe engaged you, or you maybe said something back or talked a little trash?
No, never have had anything like that.
Consummate professional, Tom Leach.
Always been very smooth in that regard.
Yeah. Consummate professional. I got you, Tom. Now, we've all listened to you guys, do games. The football team may get off to a bad start. The basketball team, say at Arkansas, they got down 15-2, get punched in the mouth and have to call a quick timeout. And we've all seen that. Has there been times where you personally are calling the game and you're like, in which there's no timeout for you, and you're like, I need to kind of get myself together. And you're trying to just make it to that first media timeout and kind of maybe recalibrate yourself. Has that ever happened?
Only 2 or 3 times, maybe, when I've been sick. Like if I cold now, I'm just about over this one. But there was one game where I was really sick and had to leave to keep from basically throwing up at courtside to Gabriel had to fill in for a few minutes. But that's about the only time when you're just kind of struggling to, if you got a bad cold or something, and just trying to get through a game. That would be the only time, just being, a few times being sick over the years. I've been fortunate. I've never had, the only games I've had to miss have been when there've been the football and basketball playing at the same time, something like that. So I couldn't be both places, but otherwise I've never had to miss one for being sick.
We could have more instances with that, with the football team going to some New Year's Day bowls and the men's basketball game being set up to be, toward the end of the year. That's a good problem to have as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we're going to have one when the football teams plays Georgia on Saturday. Basketball's got to be in Spokane the next day. So unless I catch a ride on somebody's private jet after the football game, I don't think I'll be doing the Gonzaga game. Unfortunately, I hate to miss that one, but if I can find a ride on somebody's jet after the football game, maybe I can make it.
Yeah, exactly. Going back,
you guys have a jet?
We do not have a Cats Talk jet as of yet. We're working on that. We'll get with the financial folks, see if we can make the numbers work.
A lot of crunching for a lot of years for that.
Well, it's like that line from the Ferris Bueller movie. If you have the means, I highly recommend it.
If you could get a private jet, absolutely.
That's right. Now I know you gave your lovely wife credit for a lot of transcribing in the book and giving you some pointers and things of that nature. Me having the name Vinny, I heard, Vinny Barbarino, Vinny Testaverde, hey, how you doing? Vinny Johnson, the microwave, all those type of jokes. When she agreed to take your hand in marriage and was going to become Mrs. Robin Leach, how many Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous jokes did y'all have to endure during that time period? Oh,
yeah, there were more than a few. That was because that was at probably the heyday of the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous show. So yeah, there were a few of those.
I'm sure, yeah, and people thinking they're being original and
yeah. Everybody's funny the first time, but after 500, it's really not that funny.
Right,
absolutely.
Right. Like the kid in school that breaks his arm. What happened to your arm? Well, the first time you tell it.
Yeah. Well, I've got a cast on it. You want to take a guess?
Exactly. And two, Tom, you mentioned all the time on your show, the Leach Report, which we hear in Lexington and Louisville and throughout the state. The All Resilient team. Do you highlight the high school kids that have gone through adversity, one in particular, Cassidy Rowe. We've had her on several times. We've had her dad on, and they're just great people. But how did you start the All Resilient team? How did that begin? And
my son was playing high school football at Woodford County, and just watching them practice. And he had a kidney condition that had kept him from playing football for most of his life, but finally worked out where he could play. And I was just watching practice one day and thinking, there's got to be a lot of kids that have something that they have to deal with, physical, emotional, whatever. And so I actually got with Freddie. He was with the National Guard at that time, and they signed on as our primary sponsor initially. And that enabled us to, gather the stories and come up with, create a web page for them, and to have awards for them and plaques and the different things we presented over the years, and to be able to recognize them. And it's been a really fun project, some really inspiring stories. So the National Guard was our first big sponsor. Now we've got a group of entities that are sponsoring the project, and it's really fun.
Yeah, and a lot of, unbelievable stories. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but some of the kids that the injuries, or
sometimes it's something. Like overcoming a knee injury is challenging enough, rehab and all that stuff. But then, just amazing stories of what kids have had to face. Cancer survivors and things like that.
The kid that broke his neck, and parents' divorces and things beyond their control, but affecting them, no doubt. So so it's always cool to see you highlight the high schoolers throughout the state in that regard too, and would definitely, of course, be tuning in, listen to you always. Look, one more thing too, the sports thing, where you can sync up, your radio to you and Picoro, or to you and Goose. Is that just for people in Kentucky? You can't be on our heart and try to sync up to that, or is that for people out of the state as well?
I think you have to do it off a radio signal. I guess you could do it off if you were out of state and listening on the app. But the thing is, the app, I think, is often going to be behind the action. So any way you can find to get the picture ahead of the sound. I always tell people, a lot of times it's maybe if you're watching on TV and you listen through the Game UK Athletics app or the iHeart app, usually that puts the sound behind the pictures, and then you can pause the DVR and sync it up. But it's a shame that it's as challenging as it is. I keep trying to, anytime I find anybody that's computer, IT savvy kind of people, I wanted somebody to invent an app like on the phone where you can just kind of do it yourself, and you could pull up a signal, and then you open this app and you can adjust the delay to match it up. Because I used to love to go to Reds games and listen to Marty, or when I would go on baseball trips over the every summer to listen to the local broadcasts, and it's gotten where you can't do it anymore because even if you're listening off the radio, there's a delay.
Yeah, I was in Hilton Head this past weekend and just turned on iHeart, and to my surprise, it was right with you and Picoro.
Oh, good.
More
Sometimes
so
it is
than ever. So yeah.
And it used to be in Kaywood's day, the engineer at the studio could sync up the broadcast to the local TV signal. Well, now everybody's getting their TV signal different ways. You may be getting it on dish. You may be getting it on your cable. You may be getting it, one room of the house could be a half second off. And so it's just impossible to sync it up. So what would have to happen, again, coming back to that, inventing that app, is it's got to be on the end user. The listener is going to be the one that's got to be able to sync it up. And if we ever find a way to make that easy for people, I think we'll have even more listeners.
Yeah. And last thing, man, we'll let you get out of here. Appreciate you fighting through the cold to hop on with us. Absolutely. But Monday on your call-in show, a caller called in asking about Nebraska, and Mark Stoops kind of shot it down before it got any. He said the Pandora's box. Here goes somebody asking about that, and he said he's content here and happy continuing to be here. So that was good to hear.
Yeah, I didn't even ever think Nebraska was an issue. I think it's would be a step back, and as hard as it was, for this job, it might even be just as hard there with how far it's sunk there and the situation they're in. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to come after him. But like I said today, if I were them, I'd try to round up all the money I could to get him. And if I were him, I wouldn't take the call.
Yeah. Well, where I am in Iowa now, Mr. Leach, they are very proud of what Mark Stoops has done. And when my neighbors and people know that I'm from Kentucky, it used to be what Cal and those guys are doing, but now it's, hey, Stoops has got it rolling. So they're very proud of their former player here.
Yeah, he has, fond memories, I know, of his days at Iowa as a player and his brothers too. I know a lot of people think that might be a job that would interest him. I don't know that it would. I think he's really happy here, and he's put down some pretty deep roots. And if they can have a special year this year, or sometime soon, to where you could, when this playoff expands, that 18 team or the team last year would have been right there on the fringe of getting into the playoff. And I would think if you're a guy like Stoops, if you think you can get into the playoff here, then why would you have to leave and go elsewhere? And I think Kentucky's, those 2 years would have been good enough to be right there on knocking at the door and maybe getting in to a 12-team playoff. And who knows, maybe it eventually goes to 16. And that way, you've got a shot at, the big prize, and that makes it easier to recruit.
Absolutely.
So he may not take that Nebraska call, but maybe he would just take the Iowa call as a courtesy. And that's
I'm sure he'd listen to Iowa.
Yeah.
Oh, but I really don't think that would, be the job that would, and maybe there's not one that would entice him to leave. Hopefully,
I hope not. I talk about Iowa, and I'm not saying that he's going to leave, but I'm just saying they're very proud of him, and he's on a lot of people's short list if Ferentz were to step away. But I hope Mark Stoops stays in Lexington, because the last 5-6 years have been. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Again, you see every game, but it's been fun. Kroger Field is great. The road environment is great, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Well, Tom, we look forward to hearing you on the Stoops Marrow Homecoming Invitational when Youngstown State coming to town, and hope you continue to get better. And we appreciate everything you do, listening to you in football and basketball. Enjoyed the book very much. It's kind of like, well, I'm sure it's like hearing the broadcast when you read it.
Thank you.
It's
I'm
like
so glad we did it, because I've got a lot of good tapes of those interviews that Mike and I did, and so it was fun doing the project with him.
Yeah, it's like the broadcast or the Thursday mornings when he was on Leach Report every week. It's exactly. Just you just hear both voices back and forth. They automatically just hear the two of you. So
that's right.
Great stuff, and thank you so much for everything you do, and appreciate you taking the time to hop on here with us this evening.
Thank you, guys. Glad to help. Sorry for the delay, the problems, but glad we got it worked out.
Yes,
absolutely.
Sir.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Leach.
Bye-bye.
Voice of the Cats, Tom Leach, fighting through old cold to hop on here with us. Got Tom and Freddie both in here. A lot of fun stuff. Got Youngstown State coming up, then Northern Illinois. Don't get too big for your britches. Handle business, and then get ready for them Ole Miss Rebels on the road.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks. So I am going to finish this up by watching. I saw that Kentucky took the first set in the Battle of the Bluegrass on volleyball, and don't sleep on the toppers.
Yeah,
Western Kentucky is number 21 in the country, and so it's probably been a while since the state has had 3 teams ranked in anything at the same time.
Yeah.
So we talking about football, basketball. Kentucky might be a volleyball state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At this stage, Kentucky won a championship. Louisville was runner-up the next year, and now they're both powerhouses. And again, don't forget about Western and the great talent and the great teams they've had down there. So completely excited.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll talk in the coming weeks. We got, the camp out is back. The Big Blue Madness is back for those who want to do that. And it's Memorial Coliseum is going to be involved. So we saw Cal announce that news. So we got that to look forward to as well. Got volleyball to look forward to tonight. And it's that time of year, man. All kind of stuff is popping off. I can't say I hope the Niners win next week, but I don't know who you play. Y'all at home?
I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, it was. I'm glad I didn't go.
Yeah, I thought about you, boy, when I saw that rain, and then they lost too. I was surprised. I was like, man,
well,
that TB didn't go down there and sit through that. That'd have been terrible.
Once we settled in to, my mom was here last Wednesday through Saturday, and we just thought getting to Chicago was going to be a little much. Plus, we just got a bed. Plus, we just had folks come out, take measurements to get window treatments. So you start doing all that, you look at the funds, you're like, maybe I should just watch this on TV. Maybe, and I got a new grill and still getting a lot of stuff for the house. So the traveling around, not quite there. But I think the 49ers, I think we're scheduled to go to Minnesota next year. So Minnesota, Kansas City, Chicago, all equivalent, all kind of distance-wise from Iowa. So hopefully I'll be able to see the 49ers, because I used to see them all the time when they would go to Cincinnati every 5 or 6 years in that rotation.
Yeah.
I've seen like 3 or 4 games in Cincinnati, but glad I didn't go. Not that they lost. I'm too old to be sitting outside in the rain.
Yeah, man.
And covering games like we've had the ability to do. I don't like going to games as a regular person. I know that sounds bad, but I don't like that.
I can see that.
I get used to food, and you go to a football game, you're in the box and it's covered and all this kind of stuff, and you get used to that. You don't like going back regular.
Yeah. The first one I did at Tennessee. But we had the thing. My dad, my sister, and I, we were going to every game until Kentucky won. That was, we don't care how many years it takes, we're gonna be there. And in that streak, maybe it was. I can't remember now. Anyway, one of those times I was covering it. We were in Knoxville, and so we're walking around. Not much of a tailgate scene in Neyland Stadium because it's just a lot of parking lots, and it's not, Commonwealth used to have all that spacious grass, which is not as much at Kroger Field as it used to be either. But it's even less in Knoxville. You're just kind of walking around surveying the stuff, but I got to the gate where it was to the elevator, and so I'm like, peace out, y'all. I'm fixing going up this elevator, and my dad's just like, oh, we the outside, what's you fixing to be the inside, up in here, up in here. We see it. I said, hey, I'll see y'all at this over.
That's how I operate. I go to Kroger Field, people are like, oh, TB, stop by my tailgate, and I do. I've been to a lot of great tailgates, but it's always like, I gotta go. They got food up there. I get 2-3 meals up at the press box, Commonwealth Stadium.
I followed your blueprint, because to get there 2 hours early, no matter what sport you're covering, the sampling of the morsels and the baked goods and the cooked goods, and I'm sounding like Bill Cosby, and the dinner and the green beans and I do everything. I was like, I learned by watching you. We only covered one together. That one game at Rupp, I forget who it was.
Yeah.
I think you was with Cam and I was with Big Blue, whatever. We was at different sites and both of us got to be there at the same time. But I did the same thing. I was like, this is how you do it right here. And so
as soon as they open the doors, I get to Rupp before the lights are even on. I love that.
Propping the rims up. They still racing.
Yeah. I love to get there early and hang out. I don't like. I'm not ashamed to say I don't like going as a regular fan. It's not as much fun. You get your ticket, you get your seat. Like, I don't need tickets.
We just walking around wherever we want to go and behind the scenes. And
I'm rubbing elbows with Magic Johnson. You regular folks, stay away from me. I'm courtside. People seeing me on TV.
Hey, you ain't lying.
Now it backfired. That Duke game, the Zion Williamson Duke game, with me and Tina sitting there courtside, 2 rows from the floor for that Duke basket during the second half. That was zero fun.
Yeah,
because we were close to the Duke bench and the Duke people. That was not fun.
Yeah,
and I got people texting me, "This is tough to watch." The Duke Blue Devil came to my face and said, "Your team's not very good."
Man, I see.
So I don't want to hear because you're upset you watching this game or you're even in the arena. The Duke Blue Devil. I was like, are mascots even supposed to talk?
Right. Yeah. He
like what are you doing? Your team's not very good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Duke Blue Devil.
Yeah.
So that time it backfired. But other than that, good.
Absolutely.
So volleyball coming up. I know men's soccer still number 6 in the country.
Yep.
Hey,
killing it.
And with men's and women's basketball, there's a lot going on now.
Yes,
women's track. So again, I tell folks, as you can see, I've got gymnastics. I've got who was that? Women's soccer. Yeah. I'm all cats, everything. Literally. Got my men's soccer. I got my regular soccer folks.
Yep.
On top of even, and you see my Jerry Rice shrine right there. But
you're running the gamut. You got it all covered. I see you.
Freddie talked about he's like me because he got a couple of hats. Leave me alone.
You brought that on yourself, man. Everybody's seen your game, man. We know how you roll.
Look, I'm just ready for the new basketball shorts. When can I buy those? Because look, man, we finally got rid of the checkerboard, and people complaining about these are too plain. Come on, man. Like, y'all just want to complain about something. Look, if it's Kentucky, I'm gonna wear it. Because right now, look.
The denims.
I got my denims on, man. You know, if the team does good, the uniforms become classic. So
yeah, that's right.
That's how that goes. But always a fun time. Great guest tonight. You told me who you were having. That gets me. I always get excited for Cats Talk. Get super duper excited. We have great guests and the voice of the Cat, Tom Leach, and Freddie Maggard, longtime friend of the show. Love Freddie. Love watching him in the press box. He looked like a dad outside of the delivery room in the hospital.
Yeah.
He just starts pacing.
Yeah.
And he's pacing and he's kind of mumbling. I love it. I love Freddie's energy and everything. So good to have them on and recap the great win at Florida. 3 out of 5 against the Gators.
Yep.
Kentucky fans, kids. This is my old man yelling at the cloud rant. Stop setting stuff on fire.
Yeah.
Stop knocking over cars.
Yeah.
Stop that. Just stop. Number 1, it's dumb in general. Number 2, you're beating Florida at football. You don't do that if you win 3 out of 5.
Yep.
It's lost its newness. I don't know if you saw this. I just question, when did State Street become a thing? Because I told those kids, and they're all kids, Woodland Euclid was the spot.
Yeah.
And I had a youth come to me and say, basically, Grandpa, that was in the 90s, get with it. My response was, we celebrated 2 national championships at Woodland Euclid. You celebrated 1 at State Street. Who's really the loser here? I don't know.
Fair question.
I had a good time, Woodland Euclid. I'm not going to talk about 96 because we still, 30 years, we still got some statute of limitations on some of that stuff that we did.
Yeah.
Woo, buddy.
Yeah. That's right.
I tell folks all the time, 96 was just insane. 98 was fun. Don't get me wrong. I had fun both times. But 98, that's when they shut off people driving on campus, and they had checkpoints, and they turned that Super America into a little police, like their substation. So it was organized fun. But 96,
it was
pandemonium.
It was just, yeah.
Loved it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, Grandpa. Hey, 2 championships. They still count. I don't want to hear nothing about it,
That's
kids.
Right. That's right. 2 of the 8. So leave it alone.
Yeah, but stop. Don't celebrate that. Like, don't do that. It's a bad look for all of us.
That's
It really
right.
is a bad look. I've seen that video of the kids knocking over the car on all kinds of things, NPR and CBS. Like, come on, man. We gotta do better, Kentucky students.
Be better. Exactly. And next week we got an author coming on.
Okay.
Kevin Cook. He has got a book coming out in November. It's called House of Champions. I think they might be sending a copy. I can have for him next week. But he's talking about all of Rupp Arena, Memorial Coliseum, Alumni Gym, writing and detailing it from the perspective of the venues that Kentucky has played in. So it's a different angle about Kentucky basketball. So we're gonna have Kevin Cook on next week, and we'll see. Maybe another guest. I can't say. We'll see what happens.
It's always fun, and we're gonna do it again next week
for sure. Appreciate
That's how we do.
Thanks to Freddie Maggard, Tom Leach, Terry TV Brown. Y'all can hear this wherever you listen to podcasts. Y'all can watch it on YouTube. Watch it on Roku, courtesy of the BS3 Network, bs3tvlive.com, on your Roku devices. Tell your friends about it. And if you want to advertise your business or product on the show, just reach out to the BS3 Network, and we'd be happy to promote your stuff right here on the Wednesday evenings. I hit this promo video, TB, man. Have fun. Hope the steaks and the chops come out perfectly.
Oh, we're going to get them, baby.
Real rocking. All the best to your Kate, and we'll holler at everybody next week on Cats Talk Wednesday.